Welcome to Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. I'm Nick Capozzi. We are in South Beach, Miami, and I am jacked up to be here. We got a round table going on with my man Justin Humphrey from Blindside Football, as well as Ryan Bromhead. Sorry, Rhino. So we are here. We are at the Clevelander Hotel in Miami. It's a bit nuts in here. There's also a massive thunderstorm going on. So figured, you know what, we'll turn this into a little bit of a round table. So, guys, we're going to talk a little fantasy football. We're going to talk a little bit of the Miami Dolphins. But let's kick it off with yesterday's game between the Jacksonville Jaguars, or Jaguars, I guess depends on where you're from, and, of course, the Chicago Bears. Now, Blake Bortles had a great game. I think he went 11 for 17 for 160 yards. Ryan, you think there's any chance that he actually starts the season as a quarterback?
I think there will be a chance he starts. I mean, I know the coach, Gus Bradley, said that he wants to play Blake Bortles for a whole quarter in the third preseason game, which is good for Blake Bortles. It'll give him more opportunities with the first team to see what he's actually capable of producing.
All right, good stuff. What about you? You think who's going to, at the end of the day, who's going to wind up getting the most starts on the team this year?
Honestly, I think it's going to be Chad Henne. I mean, he's not a competent quarterback. We've had him down here in South Florida, check down Henne. But I think right now they just kind of want to groom Blake Bortles and see what they have with him and their wide receiver corps. So I think they're going to take it slow. So I'm not sure we're going to see him this year for fantasy.
I think the line's actually going to be pretty good. So I'm not too worried about it. I mean, if he's going to go in and get shredded, obviously they don't want to, put the third overall pick into that kind of situation. But so I think Henne's probably going to be the starter, at least to start. But the skill position players there are better than a lot of people expected, I think. We're going to, of course, go into that in more detail tomorrow when we get to Jacksonville. Tony Chincata of Roto Experts and, of course, the Fantasy Sports Network is going to join us in Jacksonville. We're going to try and tape it in the Jags Stadium before we're going to do the draft. All right, guys, tonight we are drafting here at the Clevelander Hotel, the center of South Beach. So I don't know if you guys know this. French Montana is actually going to be here tonight. I don't know if anyone told him that I was here and he shouldn't bother coming, but yeah, apparently French Montana is going to go on the stage. So I don't know. We'll see. I hope it doesn't become an issue. All right. Let's talk a little bit more in that Bears game. So Jay Cutler, again, looked really good. Cutler's going as like the 11th, 12th quarterback off the board. What are your thoughts on Cutler? You like him this year in that offense?
I do like Jay Cutler. I think his ADP will rise above the 10th, 11th round. Probably top 8 round, I would say.
All right. Who would you rather have than Jay Cutler right now, other than, of course, the top 3? Let's take Breeze, Manning out of the equation. Who would you take Cutler over? Nick Foles, Tony Romo? Where do you have him right now?
Yeah, I think he's in that tier with maybe not so much Nick Foles, but Tony Romo, Tom Brady. If Tom Brady's falling, those drafts we do on MFL, it's 10th round plus for quarterbacks. So, yeah, Jay Cutler, I love his ADP. And even more than Cutler, Palmer, I think it's a testament to the offense that they run. Palmer looked pretty good in there. And if he's going to be the new Josh McCown in case anything happens to Cutler, it's not a bad idea to grab a handcuff there.
All right, you mentioned Josh McCown. A little bit of Tampa Bay Bucks news today. Charles Sims, actually, that ankle's a mess. He's going to have surgery, probably miss 3 to 4 months. That probably, I'm not a big Doug Martin guy, but that probably bumps up Doug Martin quite a bit. Where are you comfortable taking Martin right now, Ryan?
I'm not big on Martin either. I think it'll rise a little bit because of the Charles Sims issue, him being out 3+ months. I'd take him 4th round, 5th round.
Yeah, but he's going in the second. Would you take him in the second?
I'd take him in the first, honestly. I like Martin a lot.
Come on, the first round? Man, is the humidity getting to you?
And I love Doug Martin. And, it's sad to hear this news, but I was a little bit more excited about my ranking of Doug Martin at 6 overall at running back. So I like Martin a lot. I'm probably the wrong guy to talk to about Martin, but I like him. First round, definitely, end of first round.
All right, so in the Blindside football world, how do you guys rank the top 3 running backs this year? Let's say we'll kind of combine it between half-point PPR and standard. Let's say in a half-point PPR situation, rank AP, Charles, and Shady for me.
Well, you said AP, Charles, and Shady? Sean McCoy is obviously going to be first. I think Charles takes a seat behind him due to the shaky O-line over in Kansas City. And then, obviously, AP would be third. PPR, I would take I would take Forte before Adrian Peterson, but I would go McCoy, Charles, PPR. It would be Forte and then AP.
Okay, fair enough. That's a good point. All right, let me ask you, if you're taking some of those running backs, let's say those top three, I don't know that you have to handcuff AP, but if you were going to handcuff Shady, it's probably Polk. If you're going to handcuff Charles, obviously it's Davis. But which one of those, if given the starting opportunity, do you think would be fantasy relevant this year?
I think it's Niall Davis right off the bat. A guy you didn't mention, he's not necessarily the handcuff because I think Polk is the true handcuff. But Darren Sproles, I think, has standalone value. So he's not necessarily the handcuff, but I'll take Sproles late, 9th, 10th round, if he's there.
All right, good stuff. Now, lots going on tonight. Of course, we are doing the draft. We're going to do it in the sports bar here at the Clevelander, the Game On Sports Bar. It is a wicked location. By the way, if you're coming down to South Beach, maybe don't come in September when it's hurricane season. But other than that, it's a great time of year, great place to come out and hang out. Okay, a couple things, guys, just before we go to break. If you got to pick, we talked about color earlier. If you got to pick between Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, real quick, which of the two would you rather?
I would go Brandon Marshall, just his pure athleticism. They're both guys are going to go up and get the ball, but to me, I think the upside is with Brandon Marshall. He's proven.
All right, we're gonna see how this goes down when it actually drafts. See if you guys are actually going to back up what you're predicting. What about you, Humphrey? I was going to say Humphreys. Man, I'm losing my mind. Brandon Marshall or Alshon Jeffrey?
I'm going B. Marsh all day.
Okay, fair enough. This is what happens when you spend 6,000 miles on the road. This is draft number 10. We are in South Beach. I just wish I had time to stick around and party here. All right, if you're partying with your friends at your draft, the biggest headache is always collecting your league frees. Let someone else do it for you. Sportsvault.net. They'll go out, they'll collect them. They'll redistribute it at the end of the year. Why wouldn't you lock up your league frees? I mean, that just seems logical to me. Does it to you?
It's for free, man.
Always free. What else can you ask for? All right, this is Razzball Radio. This is the Fantasy Sports Network. We're going to be back. We're going to talk Dolphins right after this.
I was never one for traditional dating, which is why I like to meet guys on ArrangementFinders.com. Arrangement Finders puts a twist on dating that works so well, they guarantee you'll find a girl. That's right, guarantee. Sounds too good to be true? Check out these girls on ArrangementFinders.com who are looking to date. She's hot. She's hot. Okay, her, not so much. Anyway, it's free to join. Go to Arrangement Finders and meet girls like me who know what you really want.
Welcome back to Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. I still am in South Beach, and it is hot and humid, which has been a trend since I've been in the South. I don't know if you've noticed the shirts I've worn. Actually, the good people here at Clevelander gave me a great white T-shirt to wear on air. It lasted about a minute. Okay, let's get into some Dolphin stuff. I'm here with Justin and Ryan from Blindside Football. Great source. You got to check out their podcast, too. They do a great job over at Blindside. All right, so new offensive coordinator here in Miami. We're going to get into some of the stats. We actually got a lot of Dolphins in, folks. I got two Dolphin experts today, so we might actually go into the next segment talking Dolphins as well. But let's start with the quarterback situation. Ryan Tannehill, very good athlete out of A&M, arguably was a reach when he went 8th overall in the draft. But, Ryan, I'd love your take. Is there a chance that Tannehill can actually take a step forward?
I think Tannehill will take a step forward, given the fact that when he last year he was sacked 58 times, the most in the league, and he still managed to finish 18th in standard scoring fantasy football leagues. And his numbers have got progressively better since his rookie year into his sophomore year, given the new offense, the way they're going to move Mike Wallace around, Charles Clay, new offensive line has improved slightly. We would like it more, but overall I think his improvement will take a fairly good leap forward.
All right, you sound a bit like a homer, I'm not going to lie, but that's okay, that's okay. Also, too, I noticed you guys are a little bit distracted because there's so many beautiful women here at the hotel. That's why the camera's facing this way. You guys get to look at us. Sorry about that, but come on down to South Beach, you can do it yourself. Justin, what's your take on Tannehill? Because I'm not going to say at this point that he's a bust. I think he could be a serviceable guy, but as an outside observer, to me he kind of looks like a quarterback who might be a really elite backup, but can he actually take them to the playoffs?
Yeah, I think he can. Ryan mentioned he got sacked 58 times. He was still about 70 yards.
Yeah, but you lost Pouncey. You got to factor that in.
But with 58 sacks, he was still under 100 yards shy of 4,000 yards. So if they can, the offensive line isn't improved, but it's definitely new. So if he can have more opportunities throwing the ball, Bill Lazor, they're going to have more offensive weapons. They're going to have more offensive plays. His rushing, is kind of goes overlooked. He had 238 rushing yards. I think Nick Foles had 220, 16 games compared to 13. So I think if Tannehill takes his step in the third year in this new offense, he can really put up some numbers.
Okay, interesting. And I'll be curious to see how this offense rolls out. Obviously, the offensive coordinator is Bill Lazor, right? Yeah, who came from Philadelphia. And there's some interesting stats between the two. Let me come back to you, Justin. You were telling me when we walked in here today that you think there's a chance, not that he's going to replicate what he did in Philadelphia, because obviously that was a Chip Kelly offense, but how do you think overall he's going to improve the Dolphins' chances of actually putting the biscuit in the basket and scoring touchdowns?
Well, all season Heartline has kind of put the emphasis on red zone targets and converting in the red zone. So one of my favorite stats this offseason is if you take Brett Selleck and Zach Ertz, their stats, and you combine them, they make for the number 3 tight end in fantasy football. So you look at Charles Clay, he had over 100 targets. You look at if you take Brandon Gibson and combine Rashard Matthews, and you take out the games before Gibson got hurt, you take out Rashard Matthews' targets, they still finish, I have it right here real quick, 61 catches between those two in that position. So 61 catches plus 60 for Charles Clay. I think the offense can still be really well.
All right. I don't know if you guys caught it, but Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football, obviously we got to talk about it a little bit because that's what everyone's talking about. It's what you guys want to, whatever you guys want to talk about or hear us talk about is what we'll talk about. I mean, you want us to talk golf, we'll talk golf. But, of course, Johnny Football late for practice. Man, is that a bad sign or what, Ryan?
I think almost everything he does is a bad sign. I don't know if he's going to get it together. He's had so much scrutiny around him. It's kind of – he really needs to get in there and prove himself ahead of Hoyer for him to get a solid start.
Is he going to be fantasy relevant this season?
That's hard to say. I mean, maybe late into the season, yes, he might step in and help you out in playoffs for fantasy. But beginning of the season, I think they're kind of take it easy with Hoyer and play it safe, I think.
Okay. Let's now talk about the running back situation here. Obviously, they brought in Noshawn Marino. Lamar Miller has a lot of talent. And one thing I've been saying all season is preseason for football this year for fantasy, is that behind a worse offensive line than St. Louis, Lamar Miller actually had 4.0 yards per rushing attempt. Zach Stacy had 3.9. Now, the only question with Lamar Miller is his knees are made of jello. Well, so is Frank Gore's. Is there a chance that the Hurricane becomes a Dolphin star?
Yeah, I think there is. I have Miller in a couple leagues outside the 7th round. That's really the only place I'm going to touch him. 5th round, there's other skill positions I'll go for in 5th rounds. Wide receiver. The only thing about Miller is not necessarily Noshawn taking away carries, but Noshawn's going to be on the field for pass protection. He's going to, they say he catches the ball like a receiver. So he's going to be taking plays away from Lamar Miller, but he's not going to take rushes away from Lamar Miller. So I think Lamar Miller does get it done. It's just, value.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Lamar Miller is a value pick. Do I stress about drafting him? Absolutely. But if he's their 7th, 8th round, which he's been in a lot of these leagues, I'm absolutely going out and grabbing him. All right, other than Lamar Miller and Noshawn Marino, Ryan, is there any running backs here that might have some fantasy value for this season?
No, I think Lamar Miller is going to be your top. I don't know, Moreno, I would like to see him in a game-time situation to see how that pans out. I don't know about Daniel Thomas. I mean, if you take...
Daniel Thomas? Is he still in the league? I thought he was in the Canadian Football League, man.
That's what I'm saying. There's not much more than your Lamar Miller and your Noshawn Moreno.
Okay, fair enough. And you know what, Justin, you did bring up a good point. Noshawn, if he is healthy, which is a big question mark, is going to be there for a lot of pass protection because again, losing Pouncey is a big blow to this offensive line. It was already kind of being restructured. I think the defense is going to be good. Justin, do you like the defense this year for fantasy purposes?
Yeah, I do. Real quickly, before we move off the offensive line.
I love it. You take over the show, brother.
A lot of the guys, we were running down the Dolphins draft, the NFL draft, and a lot of the guys they took, their best quality was inline blocking. So a lot of the guys they got, they didn't necessarily build the offensive line, but they're trying to help Tannehill out in pass protection, and they're trying to do things to give Tannehill extra time. And yes, I think the Dolphins late round flyer, I think they may surprise some people for the defense.
Okay, fair enough. So we are here at the Clevelander. We are about to go to break. This is Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. We come back. We got more Dolphins to talk about because I got experts here. I got to take advantage. I'm Nick Capozzi. We'll be right back.
I was never one for traditional dating, which is why I like to meet guys on ArrangementFinders.com. Arrangement Finders puts a twist on dating that works so well, they guarantee you'll find a girl. That's right, guarantee. Sounds too good to be true? Check out these girls on ArrangementFinders.com who are looking to date. She's hot. She's hot. Okay, her, not so much. Anyway, it's free to join. Go to Arrangement Finders and meet girls like me who know what you really want.
Welcome back to Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. It is raining, it is pouring, and the Dolphins' offensive line might be snoring. A lot of issues there. We were talking earlier about how that offense is going to look with the line in its current situation, but now we're going to move on to wide receivers. Let's start off the top. Ryan, talk to me about Mike Wallace. This is a guy when he was in Pittsburgh was excellent. Obviously has not done as well because the offense has not done as well. What's his upside? Because this is a guy I'm seeing go 7th, 8th round again in the regular drafts with regular people.
Well, him now with this new Bill Lazor offense, they're going to be moving him around more in the slot, more on the left side. He's got a lot more upside. He, especially with Tannehill in the offensive line, and if he starts playing the way he finished out last season, I believe you're going to start him more often than not.
All right, what kind of numbers do you anticipate for Mike Wallace this year? What's his floor and his ceiling?
Well, his floor is 800 yards, but 2 years in a row, Brian Hartline had 1,000-yard receiving. I think Wallace breaks 1,000 yards this year. I think Hartline breaks 1,000 yards, and I think whoever takes over that third role, probably Brandon Gibson, I think they're going to get 800 yards. Hopefully the touchdowns go up all around, and that slot position get 5 touchdowns as well.
All right, it's going to be tough for Tannehill to be throwing touchdown wins the line on his back. We're going to talk about Brandon Gibson in a second, but first Brian Hartline. This is a guy who always at some point in the year seems to get hot, becomes fantasy relevant, if only for a brief window. What's the deal with Hartline? Is he a real wide receiver, or am I missing something?
I think he is. He just needs to pick up his touchdown production. I think that's where he's lacking as a true fantasy receiver. Like Justin mentioned, he's receiving 2 seasons in a row for 1,000 yards. I believe he will be, surprisingly, the first Dolphin to have 3 straight seasons at 1,000 yards.
Come on. When was the last time that happened? We got to go back to Mark Super Duper.
Right? So I think he'll break 1,000 yards. His touchdown production needs to rise for him to be really fantasy relevant. But overall, I do like him as the second receiver on the Dolphins.
All right. What do you think, man? Hartline, draftable, where would you take him?
Yeah, 10th, 11th round. He's around there, Greg Jennings, Kenny Stills. You're going to make that decision when you're looking real thin around 10, 11. I like him. I think he's been there 6 years. This is the 4th offense he's had to learn. And, he told Philbin, let's just make this one stick. I'm tired of learning new offenses. So.
All right. You brought up Greg Jennings. Well, let's just shift gears real quick. Greg Jennings, to me, is a guy I think everyone's forgetting about in fantasy this year. You like Jennings this year?
I do. I mean, I like the upside. I do like the upside there. I'm a little bit bigger on Cordell Patterson. But overall, I do like Greg Jennings.
You talked to me earlier at the break about Brandon Gibson. This guy's going to play in the slot on this offense. You like him a lot. Break it down for me, Justin.
Yeah, I like Brandon Gibson a lot. Last year he had a couple good games before he got injured. Rashard Matthews came in afterwards. So what I did was I combined Brandon Gibson and Rashard Matthews' their stats, and I took out the stats from Rashard Matthews from when Brandon Gibson was healthy. So we're looking at that role, that slot role. And real quick, let me grab this.
Bust it out. I like numbers.
Real quick, so that slot role, the wide receiver 3 in the Dolphins, 61 receptions, 657 yards, 5 touchdowns. That's flex worthy in a 12-team league, especially in PPR, if you're getting 93 targets. So I think it's worth considering Brandon Gibson, in deeper leagues.
All right, so we've talked about Gibson. We talked about Tannehill. We've talked about the rain that's pouring down on us here on South Beach. We've talked about Mike Wallace. Any other – we'll get to tight ends in a second, but any other receivers here that we should be aware of on this team?
Yeah, I'd like to point out Jarvis Landry. I do believe that the Dolphins selected a better receiver out of LSU over Odell Beckham. I mean, him dealing with his hamstring injuries. But Jarvis Landry, the way he's played, when we went to the training camp, he showed up. He's ready to play. He's a great receiver. He's got great hands. They do call him Mr. Reliable for a reason. He's going to catch the ball 9 times out of 10, if not 10 out of 10.
All right, speaking of Mr. Reliable, Charles Clay was a guy that last year was a sneaky play at tight end, played kind of a halfback role for the team. He was a guy that got consistent catches, wasn't sexy, but I picked him up in a couple leagues I ran with him. He was really handy. What do you think about Charles Clay this year, Justin?
I love him, man. Honestly, I'm either the first or the last to take a tight end, and usually the last because I'm too scared to touch Graham and Gronk and Thomas. So Clay's going with, Bennett, the black unicorn. What's the guy's name? I'm blanking on the name.
Black unicorn.
Martellus Bennett, yeah. Charles Clay, Martellus Bennett, Delaney Walker. Those are the tight ends I aim for towards the end of the draft, round 10.
All right, my sugar daddy of the day, brought to you by ArrangementFinders.com. That is the Dolphin that I believe is going to greatly outperform their ADP this year. You know what? I'm going with Brandon Gibson. You guys have convinced me on that. Brandon Gibson's going to be an interesting guy. Any other tight ends that we should look at on this team? I mean, if Clay goes down, is there any upside? Do they have any guys that they're developing?
I mean, they have Deion Sims. They got Michael Ignew. I think if they also got another tight end they signed in the draft, Arthur Lynch. I think he's more there for blocking purposes. But if Charles Clay goes down, I know the second tight end up is going to be Deion Sims. He's got some upside, but not as much as Clay has. If Deion Sims has to step in, he's not gonna be the 10th overall fantasy tight end as Charles Clay was last season.
All right, Justin, is it fair to say that the Dolphins' offensive line is probably in the bottom third of the league? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's fair.
And what about their defense? Top 10, maybe?
They have the potential to be a top 15. I wouldn't go 10, but they have the potential to be a top 13 defense.
All right, right now Vegas has the Dolphins as the third most likeliest team to fire their head coach first, Joe Philbin. Rhino, you think Philbin gets fired midseason?
Me being a homer, I hope he picks it up, brings it together, and we get above 500 this season. I think he can get the team together. I think last year there was a lot of drama in the locker room. Let's see if we can get all of that past us and move on to more football. We don't need all the drama, everything else that we dealt with last season. Let's just get it together, and I like him. Hopefully he doesn't get fired, but I guess only time will tell.
All right, I think there's a pretty good chance. I might lay a nickel on that. Dolphins, I don't want to tell you this, guys, but could be bad. What is going to be good, though, is we're going to go inside, do draft number 10 or 11. I've lost count. I don't know where I am most of the time. By the way, guys, you want to play daily fantasy? Join us. Every Sunday we'll be playing weekly leagues, DraftKings.com. Enter promo code Razzball when signing up to get a first-time dollar-for-dollar match from DraftKings. This is Nick Capozzi. This is Razzball Radio. This is Fantasy Sports Network. We're going to go in and draft in Miami, and then we're heading up to Jacksonville. I don't know if anyone's going to be in Jacksonville because I don't know if there's Jaguar fans. We'll see you in Jax.